Awesome. Okay. So welcome to our June Early Learning and Development Committee meeting. We adjusted our schedule today to make it a little bit less formal and we invited new and new-ish leadership of the Child Development Division, since there's been a lot of transition there. So I know I see folks joining. Why don't we do some introductions? Well, why don't we do introductions in the chat so that folks know who's here. And then I don't actually, I don't want to put CDD folks on the spot. I'm not looking at kind of specifically what we asked, but I think the hope is that this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself, at least to a broader group. Many folks you may have met already. So introducing yourself, a little bit of your professional background, what brings you to your position. And then I think it would be great for us to hear some of the priorities that you've had in your first, some people say first 100 days, but I know it's more than that for some people. And then we can open it up for some Q&A and CDD folks. If there's stuff you can't answer, that is totally fine. We understand that. But the Early Learning and Development Committee is the committee that, you know, really monitors goal 3 of the VCAP, which is kind of ensuring that children and families have access to high quality opportunities that meet their needs. And that, you know, often that this group often serves as a stakeholder group to be able to provide input around policies and programs that CDD is implementing. We've utilized it in all different ways to provide input on RFP development, to kind of advise on the CCDF, the state plan. So I think there's lots of opportunities. So that was our plan for today. Am I missing anything? All right. So Janet, I'm going to ask you to start, and then your crew can follow. Just ask folks to introduce yourself, give a little bit of your professional background on what brought you to your role, what your role is, and some of those priorities. You guys can all do introductions, and then maybe you can talk about priorities.
Yeah, we have, I think we each had identified one thing that we wanted to just give a quick update as we're doing your introductions, and then we're happy to open it up for questions and or open it up for just sort of like, what is it that you guys think we need to know as, you know, as leaders within Child Development Division. I'm happy to go first, and it's a delight to be with all of you, and wearing my you know, sitting in at this moment, I have to be like sitting at the same seat as I have been for many years now, like in the same chair physically, but mentally I'm in a different chair now at Child Development Division. It's been really, you know, like interesting and informative and actually really energizing to join the Child Development Division team. I feel like one of the things that we did, you know, soonish, you know, in the last 90 days-ish, was do a survey of the CDD team and sort of ask them sort of like, what do you like about working here? What's been hard about working here? What do you need to be successful? You know, the things one does to, and one of the things I was really heartening and inspiring was, you know, just how dedicated the CDD team is to the mission overall. Like they really, and how much respect that the sort of mutual respect there was, and it was based, and the mutual respect for colleagues within CDD was based on the fact that they really felt like everybody was really committed to kids and families. They're committed to doing excellent work, and they committed to working really hard. There was a lot of just like, you know, everybody here is working hard, getting their job done here for the right reasons. And so that's like such an incredible foundation to build from coming in as a new leader for the team. I think that for those, many of you guys I know, I would say actually most of you guys I know, like have met over the years, but I reflecting on the fact that I think yesterday was actually the 10-year anniversary of when I moved to Vermont. I, moved here with my husband and my 1-year-old at the time, who is, graduating from 5th grade next week. And so it's been, a lot has happened, right? In those 10 years, we came here to be closer to family, to my husband's family. And people have heard me say this before, but I really felt excited as I came to Vermont to really recognize that, this wasn't just a great place for like me to raise my kid because of my own personal factors, but it actually is a state that is full of communities of people who are really dedicated to the well-being of all children. And while there's work to do to improve it, there really is a sense that within Vermont, we really do care about each and every child, and that we don't accept, we're not okay with the idea that there's, unequal opportunities or really disparate outcomes for children, and that we need to be committed to addressing those together. And so I've been really fortunate over the last 10 years. I came from a background in nonprofit management, working on a lot of food and nutrition issues. And when I landed in Vermont, I continued to, was at the Vermont Community Foundation for a few years, which was a great introduction to all the different ways the communities in Vermont had, when thinking about how to make life better, in both, in very specific, like short-term ways, as well as like big picture, how do we create the communities we want? And then, have had the opportunity to work specifically in early childhood and mostly in early childhood education for the last 7 years at Let's Grow Kids, and then at Vermont AUIC. And then now I am, I guess, officially, I am 3 months, a little over 3 months into my role at the Department of Children and Families. And as people know, I joined, we were halfway through the legislative session when I joined. And so that has been like a huge focus of my efforts as I got started. And our focus has been, the conversations that we had with legislators were really focused on having like a strong bill that like reflected best practice and was going to be implementable by the Child Development Division team, right? Because we want to make sure that we actually are able to deliver on these good ideas. And everybody knows where that stands right now. And from H217, right, that the governor did veto the bill. He was very clear in his remarks that this was really about the payroll tax and the funding source, and his book, the administration's philosophy that we can't be raising new revenue, but it wasn't about the value of childcare. He had put essentially half the money on the table. And there is still, a really deep appreciation of the work being done in the early childhood and after school spaces. And I would say also in the governor's remarks, he also was very clear that he expects the legislature to override the veto. And so from a Department of Children and Family, from a DCF perspective, from a CDD perspective, we are now sort of in the place where we can start planning for implementation in a way that until we kind of knew what the decision was, where things landed and had a little bit more direction from the governor on where he anticipated this landing, it was a little trickier for us to be able to start planning as a staff team around implementation. So that's my briefest update on sort of where things are standing right now for H217. And I am happy to turn it over to Chris to continue the introductions.
Thanks, Janet. And hi, I'm Chris Case. I don't know, I haven't worked with a lot of you, I think. In my previous role, I was working at the Agency of Education before I came to CDD. I'm also new to the role. I'm about 2 months and a week, I think, into being the Director of Policy and Planning for the Child Development Division. But I worked at the Agency of Education before that. I was the director of the Student Support Services Division, which included early education. So I think I've worked with at least some of you in that capacity. My background before Agency of Ed, well, I should say, but I was at the Agency of Ed, I was in 3 different roles over like 10 years. I worked in continuous improvement there for a while, then was a project manager, which had me kind of bouncing around and I think probably working with some of you around like legislative projects and other projects that were through our secretary's office. Before that, I was working in a lot of school-based nonprofits. I did at least a couple, not a lot, so many as a couple. And I did federal consulting around special education. So my background is largely education, but also community engagement and nonprofit work, some of that related to students with disabilities and some to gifted and talented students. So that's a little bit of my background. I've only been here for a couple months, like I said, but I think that's something that struck me already in my time here after going to a conference in Philadelphia that was like a like cross state, lots of states together talking about their experiences. I was reminded of something that I was hoping to experience when I moved here from Oregon about 12 years ago. I just that our state is small enough to make the problems seem a little bit more manageable and for you to have a better sense of who the people are in the room that you need to connect with to get things done, which I really appreciated listening to people in, Georgia and like Alabama and whatever talk about the scope of their challenges. I was like, oh, we have those problems here, but we know who the people are that we need to talk to and we know who our decisions affect, I think in a way that is really, it makes it personal and it also makes it feel more manageable to me. So that's been a nice takeaway, I think, in starting this new role. The thing that I want to give you an update on was our STAR system. This is something that I think a lot of you are probably already well aware of the fact that we have some revisions that are coming. I contacted our STARS content expert, Joanna Baxney, about what she would want me to share with you. And she just wanted to have me remind you that we have our STARS manual that's currently online. The manual details what our new standards are, what the continuous improvement process for programs participating in STARS looks like. Our Spark system, it gives like an outline of what our Sparks system looks like, which is the system that provides supports and TA that accompany the work that programs are doing to continuously improve through STARS. And so that manual is currently available. If you go to our website, which I'll just throw the link in the chat, actually, I copied it and forgot to paste it. But here you go. Here's our revision page on the website, which provides a link to the manual and also provides a link to an FAQ document and a training schedule. And the training schedule, we're offering weekly trainings on different subjects related to STARS. Those trainings kick off on the 14th. So register for them if you're interested. A full list of the dates and the topics is available online. And we also have a community of practice that's kicking off on the 13th. And so if you're interested in being a part of that, please register. Joanna wanted me to remind everybody or let people know that STARS programs that have applications due this year are going to get a contact from her if they haven't already. It's like a 3-year cycle, and so the ones that are popping up this year are going to get a little tag. And then some very fresh news. We just had our revised STAR rules approved by LCAR, the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. And so and I think some of you may know this already, but whenever you have a new body of rules pass through all of the steps to be formalized, there's a public comment process, and then this legislative committee reviews and makes the final approval. So we just got that today, which is very exciting. That puts us on track to launch by July 1st, which was our kind of planned implementation date. We still need to tie some strings up procedurally, but we're planning on rolling this out on July 1st. So hot off the presses. And that's my STARS update. I'll pass it over to Dawn Rouse.
I lost my cursor there. Sorry. I'm Dr. Dawn Rouse, and I think I have 3 weeks seniority on Janet. So Beth now is like, Beth's our oldest here, not physically, but emotionally, I suppose. I'm actually a Vermonter who left in 1994 and moved back in January of 2023. So I've been in early childhood in a variety of ways. I've been an assistant teacher, a teacher, a director, And then I worked for the Child Development Bureau in the state of New Hampshire, which mirrors a great deal of what CDD does. And then I ran off to do my doctorate at McGill in Montreal and became a professor of education at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. So I spent 11 years in teacher education with a certification that was birth through 5th grade. I myself hold a birth through 6th grade license. It was time to come home. You know, I had grown up, embraced in Vermont's values and attitudes towards young children and families. And when I looked at the next step in my career, this was something that I wanted to come back to. I wanted to be part of building this very strong system for children and families. And I think my experiences, I think of it as like soup to nuts in early childhood. It gives me a unique perspective, and it's something that I bring to CDD as a content practice expert. Let's see. So my updates are around a lot of the ARPA money. We recently expanded our money, or added our money to teach. Sharon should be nodding. To teach, and we expanded the student loan repayment process. So the expansion is going to cover degrees for whenever the person achieved them. So it used to be a sort of time limited, and now it is going to be more expansive. It will also include master's degrees. Let me just look at Janet. Yes, am I remembering? So that's another benefit. We've recently added additional monies for the Room for Me, the Vermont School Age expansion, as well as the infant toddler capacity building. Let's Grow Kids will be working with First Children's Finance to be working on some of those transfers of, not transfers, but expansion of the program. We have Sparks that will be launching, hopefully not super long after STARS, but Vermont AUIC will be managing and coordinating that program. So we're very excited to be partnering with them to add that that coaching portion to the STARS process. Oh, thank you, Sharon. You were great there. And then we're also looking at ways to sustain capacity through some of those grant processes for centers. And because of course you can't have capacity if you can't sustain the capacity. If you've got a hole in your roof, it's hard to stay open. So we're really investing our ARPA money in programs that directly affect and support our providers. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Beth Maurer. There you are, Beth. I can see you on my screen now.
Hi, thanks. Good morning. Good to be back with you guys. I think I've already come here and introduced myself once, but it's good to be here with our leadership team again today. So I'm the Director of Childcare Licensing, and I have been with the Child Development Division. I probably am older than some of the people on the leadership team, both in age, but my year anniversary is actually coming up, full-time anniversary at the end of August. I joined, for 2 months, I straddled family services and as the director in Chittenden County, and while I was onboarding in this job. So I was doing 1.5 jobs for the months of June and July, and or July and August, and then came over full-time. So can't believe it's already been a year. That's very exciting. I've been with the state, Monday is my 17th year anniversary, working for the state of Vermont, always working for the Department for Children and Families, Family Services, now CDD. So currently what's happening in our world. I continue to feel very fortunate every day that I landed with this licensing unit. They are an amazing group of leaders and licensors, business technicians out in the field, doing the best they can to support new programs and programs that already exist. So they are fabulous. And what's really on the forefront of what we're doing right now is we got our rules. Many of you on this call were part of the focus groups back in March and April of 2022. I know I get a lot of emails that say, where are the rules? What's happening? Good news is we have current rules in place, so we're not in any sort of limbo. We will continue to use those rules and be really thoughtful and diligent about the rule revision. So all 3 rule sets came back from legal with lots of comments. We have already spent, our leadership team and I have already spent 4 full days going through. We've started with center-based rules, and this probably won't surprise you because our rules, we have a lot of them, not as many as some states, and but more than others. So I think we're sort of, we find balance in that, but there are a lot, and we are in chapter 5 after 4 days of looking at all of legal's comments. So starting next week, we are bringing in licensing staff and our child care business technicians to really look at content. We have been going through and answering questions, questions that legal had for us about why did you write this way, or this doesn't make sense, and trying to really simplify them as best we can and make them user friendly. So Janet and Chris is my direct supervisor now, and I'm super psyched he's on board. He doesn't, and we have some proposals for Janet and Chris to consider in terms of how do we make these rules really user friendly for the field, because as you know, anybody who's taken a deep dive into these 100+ pages is like, rule 7421, please refer back to rule 3412. And then once you get to that one, it says, oh, go back to rule 13.75. You're like, what? It's so good. I even get confused sometimes, and I'm not in the field, trying to care for children on a day-to-day basis and make sure I'm in compliance with all the things. So it's really an exciting time, and we are going to be very thoughtful and thorough in our rule revisions because well, hopefully we don't have to do this for quite some time again. There is no real best practice. I asked our federal partners, because someone said, oh, we'll be doing this again in 3 years. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. That seems soon, but there is no real best practice. There is like a 3 to 5 year, take a look at this. What's happened in your state? What do you maybe need to change? And some of you have been around and in this world, so you knew back in 2020, they took a look at the rules and they added language around equity and accessibility. And that was a small but big change, really. And so, yeah, we're in it to win it, and we're starting with center-based rules, and we will then move to our family care home and after school. So if you were to ask me if in the Q&A part you say, hey, when will those be done? I don't know. I don't know. There is, in addition to the rule revision, we also have cycle 2 of our federal partners who are coming to evaluate us and all of our compliance with the CCDF final rule and all the things that we as a state are held responsible for. And they're coming in November, right before Thanksgiving. So we have the summer to prep for that. We are also looking at figuring out how to have a career ladder in our childcare business tech world to really keep people, hold them up as a profession, but also make room for advancement. So that's really cool. We also have the Childcare Aware national survey that we're involved in right now. So what I would say is it's going to be slow and steady and thoughtful, and we will absolutely, we'd like to have at some point in time town meeting whether in person, offering in-person virtual, so that we can really talk with folks about what changes were made in the rules, and how we're moving things forward. So when it will get to the ICAR stage of things, in an ideal world, I'd love to tell you that by December we would have them ready for ICAR. Somebody's going to put that in the note. I know this is being recorded, so I'm just going to say, for the record, don't hold me to it, but that would be an ideal, is that we would be really thoughtful and by December get them to the ICAR stage of things, and then let things play out as they will with public comment, and then getting them to LCAR. So that's what I can say about licensing.
Great. Thanks, you guys. So thanks to the members of the team. It's been a really delightful to work with you. And I just want to also flag, we do have a Carolyn Long is also a member of the leadership team for the Child Development Division. She is our Director of Operations, and so she is the team member who really oversees the CDDIS. And so then so our technology side of things and the data side of things, as well as the childcare financial assistance program, of which Emily Hazard is the person who's the lead actually on childcare financial assistance. Yeah, so I just wanted to flag that Carolyn's also a key leader on our team, even if she's not with us today. So we are happy to, like I said, answer questions or even just take feedback from people about, like, again, the things that you feel like we should know as leaders of the Child Development Division. And I think in terms of priorities, right? I mean, I think we all are sharing the priorities of trying to figure out how we're getting this right for our kids and families, and for the the educators and other early childhood professionals that make this work happen. We are, as you could heard, like trying to move forward like many different projects at the same time. That's our job. We're happy to do it. And that includes both things related to childcare, both in early childhood settings as well as after school, as well as children's integrated services as another core function of the Child Development Division. And in general, we really want to make sure that there is open communication and that we're approaching the work and with the spirit of collaboration and partnership, because we know that very lots is happening, either through our state-owned computers and at the Waterbury State Office Complex, but like the work with children and families is not happening in either of those. Is happening out in the communities and in the work that you're doing. And so we want to, we know that collaboration and that partnership is the foundation of what we're doing. So, and our ability to actually achieve our goals for kids and families. So again, questions and/or comments are open. Cynthia?
And Janet, actually, you were sort of wrapping up with one of my questions that I just have for this new team. I mean, I feel like I've met all of you in at various stages, but I'm just curious from the leadership team. What I was going to say is there's so much technical work going on in your state government and your division, especially right now. But I was wondering philosophically, how's the leadership team trying to balance that sort of technical work with that community partnership liaison? I know that's a tough balance. And yet my point is as a community partner now, I find that networking absolutely invaluable with your team. And I'm just curious how that balance might play out.
I think that's the network, the suggestion on network, I think is really helpful. I think things that we're trying to, a couple of things that we're trying to look at are one, around our communications and trying to make sure that those are like really centered on the reader, you know, in terms of like, what do the readers need to know? Would they be able to take action from this? You know, are they coming at the right speed? That's always very tricky, right? In any organization. And some people want everything. And some people are like, only tell me when I need it. And so trying to figure that out is something that we want to focus on. And that's actually going to be, people know that we have a new commissioner within Department of Children and Families as well. Commissioner Winter started, you know, 1 week after I started in my role. So he's brand new, but looking at how the Department of Children and Families communicates overall is also is something that's on our minds in terms of improving things. Another thing that Commissioner Winters has highlighted sort of in his communications with the even with the legislature and others has been around the fact that we know that the transition to a unified grants and contracts unit for DCF as a whole has been challenging for partners, for every, I would say for staff and for partners, you know, and you know, really trying to make sure that we don't let those details get in the way of the work, and that we can figure out how to be even more, you know, more efficient and more streamlined there, and be really focused on how we try to see, you know, how do we both meet our like obligations to our, you know, either to our federal grant partners or to the states, you know, the Agency of Administration's like bulletins on contracting and grants, and like that we're doing that work in good faith at the same time as minimizing the administrative difficulty burdens for partners. So those are a couple of things that we're looking at in terms of just sort of like, how can we like make sure that the proactive communications are what people need, and make sure that some of the things that can, like the administrative stuff that can like really get in the way, that we can try to smooth those things out. So those are a couple of the things that we have in mind. But you know, I would say we definitely are still new, and we definitely knew that our work load is going to be is somewhat also in response to what was going to be responsive to what was going to be in the legislature. So I don't know, we haven't, I think, articulated like a specific philosophy beyond wanting to make sure that we're showing up and listening and being open and responsive, and as responsive as we can when we hear concerns. So I don't know if that starts to answer your questions. And
of course it does. And
yeah.
I'm posing it's a new leadership team to some degree. So I didn't expect you to have a concrete answer, and I'm sure it will evolve. But I just want to reinforce that as a community partner, I really appreciate when we have access to your teams, to you, not just leadership, but to, you know, your staff, when we can have discussions about what we're seeing and how we might be able to partner. And that's really important as a community member. So thank you for that.
Okay. Beth, what you sound like, looks like you want to add something.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, Cynthia. And I think from the licensing perspective, one thing that I can add is that I want to ensure that from licensing, we have a regulatory obligation. You know, we have a job to do, but I also think there's a way that we can do it that improves customer relations, that we can provide a service that is not so black and white. There are rules, but I think that we have an amazing group of licensors with such incredible skills that can be a resource to providers outside of just showing up for an annual compliance visit and providing technical assistance and really leaning in. And my staff has been incredible, sort of embracing that philosophy and doing really awesome things when programs like, you know, we had a program in St. Jay that was a total loss due to fire, and you know, the number of hours we're spending to support that program and finding alternative placements, and that happens all over the state at various times, and really just leaning into that so that providers know that we're not just here to regulate, that we are here to support you to be the best you can for children and families in Vermont. So I think that's a philosophy that I bring with me from my time at Family Services into this role, and will continue to grow with my team. So I really appreciate that question. And I did want to just add one other thing that I forgot to tell you that we're doing in licensing is during cycle 1, when the federal government came and looked at our compliance, specifically with licensing, one of the things that we shifted at some point historically is the site visit reports that are available on our public portal, which is a requirement by the feds. We have not submitted that in its entirety. And so what I mean by that is if you go on the public portal and you look at a provider's annual site visits, it will show you what they're in compliance with and if there were violations. But what it doesn't show, and sort of that customer service piece, is it doesn't show you and document the talking points, right? There's times that we go into programs that we're like, we're not going to issue a violation for that, right? There is something that you can change immediately. So let's talk about that. Let's change that right now. And then you can do that moving forward. But at some point in time, we took those talking points off the website to be available, and we have to put those back on. So for the past 6 months, we've been getting federal TA support, and we're developing new monitoring checklist for licensors to use in the field that will also that will implement very soon within the next month or so. We will finalize those checklists, and then providers will know that talking points will also be included on the public portal. So those are some changes that will be coming. And I actually think it's I don't know why it changed back in the day, but we're going to be moving towards, making sure that a complete report is available on our website, because we have to, for parent education and making sure that customers know, parents know, have the complete picture of providers that they potentially are going to place their children in. Thanks for letting me add that.
Thanks, Beth. Are there any questions, comments, things you want to learn more about? I'm shocked at the silence. All right. Well, giving folks a minute to think about if there are other kind of issues that you want to either share with the CDD team, or if you want some more information. Yeah, Eddie, go ahead.
Chris, I'm wondering, because you came from the Department of Education, how is the collaborative relationship with the Department of Education?
So that's a great question, and thanks. So the group that I work with at the Department of Education is the group that we work most closely with at CDD, the early learning team. I think it's a good relationship. I mean, I think we have room to grow. I mean, like we always have room to grow when we're talking cross-agency relationships, but I think it's largely positive. And I think that a lot of that is we have opportunities, I guess I'll say, with new leadership to revisit some of our conversations that we've had previously and practices that we're currently engaging in, to try to make sure that everything is working as well as possible. But I also know that there's, I feel like my experiences with the Agency of Education were always very good. And so with the group that I was working with, at least. And so, yeah, looking forward to just continuing to build on that in this new role at CDD.
Great, glad to hear that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add to that because there's been, the childcare legislation does include a, pre-K implementation committee around that, that has meant that I've been, our leadership with leadership, including the governor's office, AOE leadership, and DCF leadership have been in regular communication, because we needed to, as we were, needed to be coordinating on our testimony. And then now as we're talking about implementation and I think for people who were paying attention to the legislative process, the administration's perspective is that we actually do feel like universal pre-kindergarten as it currently stands is actually a strong foundation to build from, and feel really strongly about the mixed delivery system and the inclusion of 3- and 4-year-olds. So that the direction that you know, the direction that's been given in H217 is definitely not the administration's first choice. And, you know, we are already, you know, starting to think about what that implementation committee would look like, what would be the questions we needed to explore, especially given that stuff, it's not our first choice. And we've definitely been having, you know, the conversations about the fact that, you know, how did we, a little bit more conversations about how over time have we landed here? Because, you know, when you have a program that actually is, you know, second in the nation in terms of program access for 4-year-olds and for 3-year-olds and fourth in the nation for 4-year-olds, like, how did we land in a place where somehow the legislature thought the program was totally broken? So we've got, you know, and so recognizing that we've got some work, we do have some additional work to do as partners and as the administration to make sure that that we are, you know, that we are communicating what is working, as well as making sure we are, you know, addressing the things that are causing tension or are sticking points for people. So I just offer that quickly. So as much as we don't agree with where the legislation appears to have landed, it also has been, I think, an impetus for some good conversation so far.
And I just wanted to tack on to, even outside of the legislative context, I think people are aware of this already, but, you know, the preschool development grant has given us a chance to work together on some initiatives. And so I think that, like, to the degree that, like, I mean, because again, there's always room to improve and to grow in terms of our relationships, and also room to clarify roles, responsibilities, understandings of how we do the work. And I think that the preschool development grant has given us a chance to really, like, alongside a legislative context or maybe outside of it or whatever, to dig into some of those questions and to just figure out how to make these systems work better for Vermonters. So we're appreciating those opportunities, not that they've come up.
Thank you. Any other questions? So one of the things that we've talked about in terms of the role of ELD as kind of one of the places that can help provide some kind of stakeholder input. I wonder if there are things that you see that this committee might be helpful in the coming year, and what you plan on, like we shared last time, and perhaps Dawn will reintroduce you, as Dawn is just stepping in as the public co-chair of this committee. Thank you so much. So with the BBF VCAP committees, we're a public-private partnership, and so we feel like having co-leadership of committees is really important, even if making that happen can sometimes be a challenging spot. And so especially for our agency folks who you know, may, you know, have to navigate that space sometimes in a creative way. So are there things that you're coming up that you think the committee might be helpful with, or particular things that where the committee would like to discuss, like we'll be building policy recommendations and being able to kind of bring those to partners. So from CDD's perspective, are there kind of needs for stakeholder engagement coming up?
Well, I think in terms of implementation of H217, if we're operating the assumption that it's becoming law, then there definitely are places where CDD will definitely benefit from having input in the field as we are moving forward from this committee, and also thinking about how to use the BBF network more broadly, likely for that. And so, for example, H217 guides us around, provides some, you know, asked us to to define enrollment-based policies for childcare financial assistance. So that would be a place where I think that, sharing some initial thinking, sharing how it's done in some in other states, and getting some ideas from this group, I think could be helpful for us in finalizing that process. I think it then has to go through a rulemaking situation. This is like, that whole part of it is very much a learning curve for me. Both like, how does the state budget, how does the money actually flow the state budget process, as well as like the administrative rulemaking process. I'm grateful to have people on our team who have been in state government for much longer. There's also looking at the service needs that are associated with childcare financial assistance. Again, this was like, what are the work requirements, right? How do we figure out how many hours a family needs, that kind of stuff. Like, to look back at those service needs is another priority, because we do want to make sure that the program really functions well and meets the needs of the families that I think we've agreed that need it. And then I think because we're doing there's such a combination of workforce programs that are happening, I think that, and that has been a traditional role for this committee, would be for us to look at those programs. And again, that's not necessarily it. I mean, that could be, I would assume that would be a partnership along with like Vermont UIC, which does hold most of the contracts for those programs. Those are some examples of places where we're thinking about how to do that, and really want to make sure that we're, leveraging this committee and the Building Bright Futures framework overall.
Great. Okay. So we are coming up on time. I want to thank our CDD partners. Thank you for coming and doing this virtual meet and greet. As people said, it's really great to get the updates and to spend some time together. Super accessible, and we appreciate that. As we finish up, are there any org updates from partners joining that you wanted to share before we finish?
Oh, I have one.
Great. And then Valerie, yeah.
Sorry. One thing just to keep in mind that people may have noticed in 217 is that there were, we're going to be hiring, CDD is going to be hiring for a number of positions. There's a lot happening now. And so I just wanted to flag that. One thing to know is that Joanna Vasey has let us know that she's going to be retiring at the end of August. So we are going to be looking for a new lead for the STARS system for the state. So that I think is, that's going to be a really important hire. In addition, there's going to be some other positions open because in H217, I think the DCF is going to be adding 11 positions in that. We also have preschool development grant positions HR systems in state government, also learning those, but we're hopeful that we're going to actually be able to post those positions next month. And those are also going to be positions to look at. And so I know that the hiring market is tight. I know this is a little awkward, but I wanted to put that out there because we also know there's a bunch of people who were trained, right, in this work, right, who have left to do other work because for a variety of reasons, often because of wages, and maybe these other jobs or their own life needs, and maybe some of these other jobs could bring their talents back into the early child sphere, and so that hopefully we're bringing those talents back into the sphere rather than just adjusting from each other. So just wanted to let folks know that those are going to come. So okay. At the end of, I see the chat here, end of August for Joanna Vasey.
August, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Valerie.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself to those of you who do not know me, or some of you may know me from my previous role, but I'm Dr. Valerie Wood, and I am a new team member at Building Bright Futures under the PDG grant. Have been brought on to be the new Early Childhood Systems Evaluator. So I anticipate being in many meetings and conversations with the folks in this virtual space, and as we move along, possibly in person as well, to look at that scope of work. It's broad. It touches on so many different facets of the early child system. And I feel very privileged to be able to step into this role because it's an exciting time to be looking at the early childhood system. So Janet, in the theme of like new hires and encouraging people to bring their expertise into this, in my previous role, I was a research assistant professor at the University of Vermont at the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion. So I bring with me some of that lens of looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically through the disability and inclusion lens. So excited to be a part of the BBF team and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you. Sharon.
Hi, y'all. I just wanted to remind folks that the deadline is approaching for workshop proposals for the annual fall conference. I'll put it in the chat. It says that the deadline is tomorrow. We're looking at extending it a few more days. So if you've been thinking about submitting a proposal or know someone who has, please let them know. We're looking forward to having a review of those proposals very soon. Also, we've announced the nomination process for the Early Childhood Educator of the Year Award. That is live on our website as well. And as I put in the chat earlier when we were talking about Sparks, the first position has been announced. The opening, the job search is on for someone to lead the Sparks program. And by the end of the week, we'll be advertising for our 6 quality support specialists. We're working with an HR consultant because, as Janet mentioned, this competitive job market and all of these opportunities in this field right now, it's going to be tricky to fill all these positions for all of us, I'm sure. And so our HR consultant has sort of given us some advisement on the order to put out that recruitment process. So please continue to have folks check back on our website because new positions will be added over the next several weeks. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's great to see everyone. We have a July meeting. So the next early learning and development meeting is July. I'm looking at the date. We are actually going to hold it as a joint meeting with the Child Outcomes Accountability team, and we will be joined by some partners at VCHIP and Department of Health around some work that they have been doing around autism screening and some significant barriers that the state has been facing, as many of us know. So in terms of access to particular populations, we felt like it was an issue that crossed the committees. So that will be part of the agenda July 13th. So until then, have a great summer. We'll see you soon.